This is the first of two videos in which I will show how the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses has tightened and loosened their stance on higher education in a cyclical way over the last 40 years, depending on the criteria of the leaders in charge at the time. If you finally want to understand why there's so much confusion on this topic, don't miss this video and the next one. In this first video, you'll see clearly that David Splane's talk on higher education in Governing Body Report number 5 is just a rehash version of a 1992 Watchtower magazine. Stay until the end, because this video lays out different arguments you need to grasp in order to fully understand the second video in the series. You won't believe the way these men on the governing body play with and do whatever they please with their flock, according to whim. According to the criteria of the leaders in charge at the time. Before we get started, if you're new here, let me tell you that the voice you're hearing has been generated with artificial intelligence. However, the content doesn't come from an automated system. It was written entirely by the creator of this channel. You can call me Nowachi. As always, let's cut to the chase. Let's compare different parts of Governing Body Report number 5 with paragraphs from the article Education with a Purpose, published in the Watchtower of November 1st, 1992. Pay close attention.
Of course, the best career is a life in full-time service. Even so, full-time servants need to support themselves financially. In some places, it's possible to earn a decent living without getting further education. In other lands, additional education is required if you hope to find employment that has reasonable hours and that pays fairly well.
In this segment, 3 key ideas are presented. First, the best career is full-time service. Second, in some places, it is possible to get a job with only basic education. In other words, if this is your situation, do not pursue further schooling. Third, in other places, additional studies are required in order to find a job with reasonable hours and pay. Now, let us see how these 3 ideas are expressed in the November 1st, 1992 Watchtower. Paragraph 9 says, "How much education does a young Christian need in order to respect these Bible principles and meet his Christian obligations?" This varies from country to country. By and large, however, it seems that the general trend in many lands is that the level of schooling required to earn decent wages is now higher than it was a few years ago. Reports received from branches of the Watchtower Society in different parts of the world indicate that in many places it is difficult to find jobs with decent wages after completing simply the minimum schooling required by law, or in some countries, even after finishing secondary or high school. Then, in paragraph 12 we read, "Christians should regard education as a means to an end. In these last days, their purpose is to serve Jehovah as much and as effectively as possible. If in the country where they live, minimal or even high school education will only allow them to find jobs providing insufficient income to support themselves as pioneers, then supplementary education or training might be considered. This would be with the specific goal of full-time service." As you can see, here we clearly find the 3 ideas we mentioned earlier. Pioneering as the best career. That in some countries, basic education is enough to get a good job, and therefore, there is no need to pursue more schooling. And that in other places, supplementary education is required, and in those places, it is acceptable to seek further schooling. And here is where things start to get interesting. Let's look at the next section.
Each adult Christian, and in the case of minor children, each family head, should prayerfully consider Bible principles and the unique factors involved with a certain educational program before making the decision. And while an elder or a mature friend may discuss with us the pros and cons about obtaining additional education, no Christian, including the elders, should judge a fellow Christian's personal decision on this matter.
In this section, 2 key ideas appear. First, every Jehovah's Witness, and in the case of minors, their parents, should take Bible principles into account with prayer before deciding what to study. Second, no one should criticize the decision that is made. Now, let us see how this same idea is expressed in the November 1st, 1992 Watchtower. In paragraph 16, we read, "So when parents and young Christians today, after carefully and prayerfully weighing the pros and cons, decide for or against post-secondary studies, others in the congregation should not criticize them." As you can see, this section, which is the most important part of Uncle Splane's talk, is practically a copy and paste of what was said in the November 1st, 1992 Watchtower. The only difference is that Splane added the phrase, "not even the elders," which is nothing more than a clarification for those who might not have understood, since the elders are also part of the congregation. It is clear that the two key ideas from this second part of Splane's talk also appear in the November 1st, 1992 Watchtower. But that is not all. In the rest of his speech, Uncle Splane went on to warn you about the serious dangers that, according to him, you will face if you decide to take his word for it and pursue higher education. Watch this.
However, the Bible warns us of the dangers of materialism or seeking security in this system of things. If your motive is to gain wealth or prestige, not only might you be left feeling empty, but you could also drift away from Jehovah. Could you support yourself without further education? Many pioneers have been able to do so by finding part-time work. If you're considering additional education, think about the time it will require. Will you still have time for your spiritual routine and family obligations? Could your secular studies leave you so mentally exhausted that you have no energy left for meeting preparation or personal study? What about the length? How many months or years will it take to complete? If you're young, will the additional education allow you to give Jehovah your best, perhaps in the full-time service, while you're still young? Are there shorter education options in the same field? Think also about practical considerations like the location and the cost. You may be able to find an educational program close to home. But what if you find a program in another city? Or what if the education requires you to live on campus? Be aware that moving away from your family poses a serious spiritual danger. View yourself as a servant of Jehovah first, and a student second. A sister named Samantha said, "I promised myself that if my education were ever to interfere with my service to Jehovah, I would quit school." Another important safeguard is to protect your thinking abilities. Some courses might expose you to philosophy and empty deception, including atheism and evolution. They could also promote a spirit of self-reliance. If you decide to get additional education, your fellow students might try to include you in their social life. However, you need to be cautious. Although you share a classroom with your fellow students, you don't share their values. And the more time you spend with them, the more their thinking can affect you.
We already saw in the November 1st, 1992 Watchtower that the governing body recommended pursuing additional studies with the specific purpose of engaging in full-time service. But that is not the only warning shared by both Splane and the 1992 Watchtower. It is found in paragraph 18. If additional courses are taken, certainly the motive should not be to shine scholastically or to carve out a prestigious worldly career. Courses should be chosen with care. This magazine has placed emphasis on the dangers of higher learning, and justifiably so, for much higher education opposes the healthful teaching of the Bible. Further, since the 1960s, many schools of advanced learning have become hotbeds of lawlessness and immorality. The faithful and discreet slave has strongly discouraged entering that kind of environment. Up to this point, it is clear that David Splane's much-talked-about speech on higher education is nothing more than a rehashed version of the article Education with a purpose published in the November 1st, 1992 Watchtower. In my next video, I will show, using the organization's own publications, that over the last 40 years the Watchtower has gone through at least 2 full cycles of tightening and loosening regarding the subject of higher education, playing in this way with the expectations and dreams of its followers. So whatever you do, don't miss the next video. Let me ask you something. Do you want this content to reach more and more people who need it? It's very easy and it doesn't cost a thing. Just subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a like, and share this video with anyone you think it could help. Thank you for being part of this project. See you soon.